Hi.
Hey, welcome to the Call to Learn Table Talk discussion number 17 today. We are Thom and Tresta Neal.
Yeah, and today we're going to go over the whole process that we've been doing for the last few weeks on Princples.
Yes.
Including what a principle is and isn't, just vaguely there.
Yeah.
Because we've covered that pretty well. We'll just briefly say that, I should say, not vaguely.
But we're going to role play an action. We're going to role play a whole thing of how you could do it with your children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess, is that where we're going to begin? We'll just begin with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, no more Thom and Tresta. We're now whatever, right?
Right. No, I want you to, before we start role playing, to think about, to think about how you would teach this to your children, right? And then afterwards, we will do a reflection and we'll tell you what points we hit, what principles we did, what I did before, how I got to the teaching part. We'll do a reflection on the whole thing. But this is going to be about a 10-minute role play. And cool thing is we're going to be using science for our teacher. And I'm going to be using this book, the new one, the Universal Model, meaning that the hydrosphere is in that. So it's a new book that's just recently released. If you haven't heard it, go to universalmodel.com. So I took a lesson out of there, and I'm going to be teaching it to Thom. All right, you ready?
All right, let's see what we can do.
Okay, so this applies not just to children, but applies to adults too. So like I came home from an event or something like that, and I'm excited to teach them. So but think of it as we're trying to find the principle. All right, ready?
Okay.
Put on our or whatever's. Okay, do you remember? I remember when I was just a little girl, St. Helens went off.
Right.
Do you remember that?
And I wasn't a little girl, but yes, okay. I remember when that happened.
So when it went off, I was thinking, man, I just remember hearing story after story about the devastation of that volcano and the hardship of the volcano. And what do you remember?
My dad, he grew up around Mount St. Helens.
That's true.
And so he was very sad. Mm-hmm. The whole thing made him extremely sad because when it exploded, it totally wiped out Spirit Lake. And he had said before that, he had told us about Spirit Lake before this all happened.
Yeah.
And how beautiful it was. And we had we had one or two pictures maybe of like him and his dad out on the lake or whatnot. And so it was a treasure to him because it was a time in his life he just really remembered with his parents.
Dad, yeah.
And so when that happened, my dad was just so sad for that to have happened.
Yeah.
And destroyed
it was a sad
It was like
occasion.
destroying his
childhood memories, or at least a place where the monument is gone. Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're talking about. Remember last time we talked about volcanoes, and we talked about a lot of different types of volcanoes and what they were. Well, today I just want to talk about Mount St. Helens and how different of a volcano it is.
Well, I remember, so when I was young, around 7-ish, I went with my parents to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I remembered we did lots of we did some presentations when we came back and showed people about Hawaii and how it was formed and the volcanoes and how the lava would come out and it would just go over everything and it would build up and create this island.
Yeah.
But Mount St. Helens, that was a weird thing. Everything was destroyed, but I don't remember anything about lava.
Yeah, actually there wasn't any lava in that volcano.
Really?
Yeah, there wasn't.
That's why.
And so this is the interesting part too, because I just learned this actually, is that when the big sphere that comes out of it, they checked and see how much ash was in there and how much things, and they found that there was 80% water of everything that came out of that volcano.
80% water.
80% water.
So where was the lava?
Yeah, where was the lava?
I don't know.
It's a good question. It's a really good question.
Because you look at it, and it looks like a bomb went off. Mm-hmm. There's lots of destruction, but it looks like a bomb, not a volcano.
Yeah.
Like it just exploded. Well, and it did. It exploded.
Yeah, it just left this big hole, explosion hole, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's learn about why that happened and what happened with this volcano. So you remember when we talked about friction? You remember when we have pressure, it doesn't cause a lot of heat, right? When you're pressing your hands together, it doesn't cause a lot of heat.
Okay.
But when you're rubbing them back and forth, it causes a lot of heat, right?
Right.
And that's what happens in the center of the earth, or the crust of the earth, right? Is that when those rocks are moving or shift back and forth, they're rubbing against each other so fast and so hard that's creating a melted rock. That friction is creating the lava flow. Okay? And that happens all the time. You have lava flows running within our crust sporadically all over, right?
Okay.
But we also have underground water flows.
Right.
That are flowing underneath the ground all the time, right? So under Mount St. Helens, one of those lava flows reached up and hit a groundwater flow. So what happens when hot lava reaches water?
Well, again, from Hawaii, we had these videos that my parents had where the lava was spewing out into the ocean, and it was just these big, huge, billowy clouds of steam.
Yeah, steam happens. It immediately evaporates the water on spot, right?
To steam, anyway.
To steam, yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, it just makes steam.
It doesn't turn to air, so.
Yeah. So under Mount St. Helens, what happened is that lava flow hits the water, and as soon as it's hit the water, it doesn't have a place to go. That steam doesn't have anywhere to go because it's underground.
Right.
So then, what do you think happens?
Well, if you have a pot of water and you boil it, it rattles the top because it's trying to get out.
Yeah.
The steam is trying to escape. So it creates pressure. Well, that's how they did engines and whatnot, right? Steam engines.
Yeah.
It was creating the force of the steam was what created the force to move the pistons or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So what's going to happen underground?
I don't know. Let's see. It would seep out somehow.
Yeah. It actually explodes. Right? There's so much pressure underground that and it was close enough to the surface, it just explodes. You see the lava underneath, and then you see the groundwater sporadic, and then you see a little crack in the ground, and where the steam is, the lava flow is going up into it, and it hits the water flow. And then it's about this far away from the ground in the picture. And then you see that was one picture, and then the next picture you see it just making this big, huge explosion going up and out.
Okay.
Ruining the ground, and filling up the sky. I remember the sky was just filled with steam and ash for days.
Pictures,
weeks.
And on TV there'd be video of that and everything.
Yeah. Crazy, huh?
So, yeah. All that time
Crazy amounts of destruction. Did you also know that Mount St. Helen had mud flows, not lava flows?
I knew that there were mud flows, but that was a question I don't know if I never asked, but I never had answered if I did. Is why was there mud flows rather than lava? Because that was always my question. Why? I don't remember lava.
There was no lava. The lava was underground, and it just hit the water. And it never came up out of the ground. So it was only the mudslide and the water that came out of that. So isn't that fascinating? I think it's so amazing. So you had mentioned earlier, it rattles the thing. So think about
in a pan. There, if it starts to boil, right, and it'll start rattling the top if you don't have the top off.
Right. So under pressure, what would it be?
Well, right. How would you stop it?
Yeah. How could you, like pressure cooking, right?
Yeah, you can push it down and hold it down, but that just creates more pressure.
Right.
Or you could turn off the heat and get rid of it.
Yeah. So under the ground, it has that pressure. It's got to be released somehow. Right. There's no place for it to go. It's got to go out or get out or explode, just like the pressure. So now knowing about how lava flow hitting water creates this steam and creates this pressure, could you come up with a concise principle statement?
Okay, so there's water, there's steam, the rock. So when rock hits, well, not rock, when the
melted rock or lava,
when the lava hits water, it turns to steam and causes pressure.
Yeah.
That builds up to an explosion. Or it could.
It
builds up to pressure.
Yeah.
It's the pressure. That's what it would be.
Okay.
So if I'm going to bring
So
it down to
concise
a concise,
statement. Yeah.
I'm going to say that lava hitting an amount of water will cause it to instantly turn to steam, causing a lot of pressure. Or
well, if it's underground, it's pressure, right?
Well, yeah, it does. It just turns it to steam.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a principle.
That's what it would be.
Yeah. That's a principle.
So it would almost be like an equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You'd have lava plus water equals steam.
Yes.
And then from that we'd see that what is steam.
Mm-hmm. So could you create another one now with the pressure?
Yeah. What would you say?
When
when steam is confined, it and is continuing to be. I mean, you can confine some steam,
right?
But if you confine steam
and it
continue to build more steam in a confined, so building of steam in a confined space causes pressure.
Okay, good. So can you see you just created two really great principle statements? Okay. Now let's take that principle, same idea. Let's take the first one, that water, when connected with lava, creates a massive amount of steam. Is there anything else you can use that principle in another area of life?
Like just that something causes...
Yeah, you could use it as the equation, or you could think of it as...
I can see water. I mean, that's how we use for ironing clothes. We add heat with water because you can switch it to instead of saying lava hitting water, you could say heated water produces steam, right?
Yes.
And so that's really even a more concise principle. And so you can use that to find ways to iron your clothes better by adding steam and water, heat and water together. Then you can get the steam that you needed for that. You use it for cleaning too sometimes.
Yeah.
Taking water in that to clean something.
Good. Awesome. That's a great example. All right, so now let's take the next statement about pressure. So when steam is built up into pressure, what could that...
cooking, right?
Yes.
We purposely have a lid that tightens down. That only let in up to a certain amount of pounds, and then we allow some to escape, right?
Okay.
With the devices they have.
Yeah.
But that steam causes pressure. I mean, we're heat with water, causing that, and because it has no place to go, it's causing a lot of pressure, and that, and I don't know the principle. I mean, I'd have to think about the principle behind why it cooks food at a tenderizes meat, and
that'll be
why it cooks faster and everything. That's another principle there, but there's something to do with the pressure.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it applies to cooking. How about another area of life?
You mean like when I allow things to upset me, but I don't say anything about it, and I bottle it up, and cranky,
okay.
And then I get mad, or something.
Yeah. Okay. So walk me through that. How is that like a volcano? Or a hydro fountain? Is this?
Let's see. So it's just equating things. I'm just jumping things, and I'm saying, okay, so the heat is like new emotions coming in.
Okay.
And the
lava.
No, that would be the steam being produced.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then the not allowing it out, or not figuring a way to handle the emotion is the stopper.
Okay.
And so then you get too much of it, it explodes.
Okay. And you get angry or yell at your kids or whatever.
I mean, that happens, right?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's the principle would be, if you're building something up, it's going to cause a pressure.
Yeah.
It
needs to have a release.
That if you don't take care of the pressure, it explodes.
Awesome.
Whether it's your emotions
cool.
or I mean, because really that's what we do in a car too, right? It's just not steam. We don't call it a steam engine; it's a internal combustion engine. But it's doing the same thing. It's adding again, a heat to cause a pressure that is then released by pushing the pistons.
Yeah. Now, if you'll write down that principle in your notebook and write about what you learned today. Will you do that?
Oh, you're committing me to this.
Yes,
now.
I am.
Well, we have this principle a day that we go with. That's the principle.
That's the principle for your day. That's right. Awesome.
So I can take care of that.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
School's over.
All right, school's over. So now we're done with
Okay.
the role-playing. You can tell we didn't practice the role-playing too much beforehand.
Nope.
We did know what the role-play would consist of, but obviously we didn't practice it too much.
Okay, so let's do a reflection on how that role-play went. Okay, what did we do? So me as a teacher, as the role of a teacher, I decide what I'm going to teach. And I chose to do it about Mount St. Helens from this book. I looked at the pictures, I looked at the book, I chose a section of what I wanted to teach, and I thought about a couple principles. I thought about 4 principles, actually, and I wrote them out for myself. And I thought, these are the principles I'd like my husband, in this case, to discover. But then I also thought, he's probably going to lead me to a couple more. Yeah. And which often happens when you're teaching kids, because I'm like, well, this happened, this one, and then you're all saying, boom, 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 here's another principle.
Everyone's an individual, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone comes up, has different inspiration by it.
Yep, exactly. So the way you discover what you're going to teach, or the way to plan what you're going to teach is, first of all, you take a section, either a section from your notebook, or a section from a story, or you read a story, or you, like in my case, I found a section in the science, whatever you're going to teach, and you find what you're going to concentrate on, and that's the first thing. That's the first thing you do. You find what you're going to concentrate on, and then you ask these questions. What did I learn from this? And you write that down and think about it. And then you say, okay, what are the converting doctrines of this? Because they're higher and lower principles, right? What are the converting principles in there? Is there any? Do you want to get to that? If there's not, or what principle do you want them to learn? And then what do your children need? Those are the 3 questions. What did I learn? What are the converting principles in here? And I write them down. And then, I write all the principles down. And then what do my children need to learn? Which of these principles do I want to choose from? Okay.
So in this case, it could have been you wanted them to learn something about science specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which then could, of course, be used in different types of science. You learned it from the earth, but then you could learn about cooking or machinery or stuff like that. But it also could have been more...
Well, see, I liked how you talked about your emotions, right?
Well,
you went to your emotions.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Mine, what I went to that I wanted, like if I was going to teach another son of mine who always goes, when he gets mad, I thought, well, it would be really great if I were teaching him that we could get to the principle of his reactions to things, right? Because
it's the reaction of it.
Yeah.
It's funny you said that. You went, it's pressure causing a...
Yeah, exactly. An explosion in a hump. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I was thinking what I was meaning by that when I said you could find it from science, or you could have had a situation where one of the kids just exploded, and you could use that as a you can see, because you've studied different things, that you could have easily gone, oh, I know what we can do. We can talk about pressure, and we can use Mount St. Helens, and we'll get science in.
Yeah, you could go backwards. We'll absolutely, you could go backwards.
And we'll get a little bit of self-discipline in, and we get, you know what I mean? You can cover so many things because you're using it as using a principle.
And my principle is found everywhere, or in many things. All right, so you're going to teach them, how did we go from concept to procedure to principle?
Okay, so when we were talking about it, right, she just brought in about Mount St. Helens. And so we started talking about Mount St. Helens and the fact that it was a volcano that blew up. And so immediately the concepts that come to mind are volcanoes and what volcanoes do as far as what we know at the time.
Right.
At that moment, in the role play, I didn't know, as the student, I didn't know that it was esteem that there was 80% water in the cloud that came out of the explosion from Mount St. Helens and all. And so
that's the concept.
So those are the concepts that I had a general concept of a volcano.
But now you have a new concept.
And I have a new concept. That's an interesting point, because if you remember from our previous illustrations, you have a concept and then you have procedures. And the procedure here had to do with, there's two different kinds of procedures. One was a procedure you took me through to discover the principle, talking about the volcano and talking about
how lava is formed,
how
underground water is,
and how they meet and all those kinds of things. But there was also the procedure of the actual that came to the principle, which was the procedure of that exact thing. There's lava. There's an underwater source of underground water. They meet, they build up the pressure, and it explodes. That's the
procedure.
Yeah. And then we discovered why, which was the principles, which were that, when those two meet,
when heat and water
meet, they cause steam, which being confined causes pressure, and when there's too much pressure, eventually it has to explode. It has to escape.
So you can see concept, and procedure, principle.
As I remember now, if you remember, in Mount St. Helens, we for weeks beforehand, we were hearing, of escaping steam.
Oh yeah.
Because when you first asked me the question, my first thought was, well, it has to seep out. But I was thinking seeping more than it's so much happening at once, it can't confine it and it explodes. Yeah. And so, that's cool that they had all of those. There's
actually a lot more to it, right? We were just role-playing a short little thing. But there is a lot more to St. Helens with
so,
with hydrosphere.
But what's cool about that is that we went from the concept of a volcano to the procedure of how it happened to discovering the principle, which gave us a new concept on the volcano.
So it led you back again to a new question, right? And so we could go around. Yeah, exactly. And so we also discovered, I taught him through that, well, how could you write that in a concise little statement? And that is the principle. Once he got down and down and down and down, and you could tell he was here, and then he went down to here, and you made it smaller and smaller into a concise principle.
Yeah.
And then we also learned how to apply that. I said, okay, so how does that same statement apply in other areas of life in general?
And I think in that one, in our role play, we might have made it a little bit awkward or whatnot, but it's a challenge as a teacher to find unique ways to ask that question. How can you use that in the rest of your life without saying, how can you use that in the rest of your life all the time?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Actually, it comes naturally, I think. Is that once you've discovered the principle and you're saying, well, yeah, that happens in a train. You automatically said that, right? Oh, a steam engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so if you had started out with a child that just exploded and you were going backwards, I'm pretty, if it's one child or if there's more people in the room, you're not telling everyone, okay, I'm going to tell you about what happened here. You don't do that, but people will discover that naturally.
Yeah.
As you talk about it.
So in teaching, we've talked about this where we have the information and then we have understanding and application. Will you teach them how we did that through that?
Okay, so you mean that we started out with
This is the levels of learning that we talked about in
so we understood. We started out by explaining certain principles about, or not principles, but certain information about what happened at Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
Various different discoveries that were discovered from that explosion and that event. So that was just the basics.
Yeah, that's just the information
and explaining that there was lava and that it hit the water and those kinds of things. So that was the base level, and then to get to the next one, we're starting to use some symbolisms and whatnot. We talked about the pot and how.
Well, that's more like application, though, right? You got to the understanding that heat.
Well, but remember at the beginning, I said, well, because you were asking about steam and what's going to happen. I compared it to a pot of water at that time too.
Oh, that's true.
Going, okay, well, when I see steam, because that's I'm referencing when I seen steam before.
Yeah.
And so when I see steam, I see it rattling the lid on a pan. Well, then I think about, okay, it's rattling that lid. That's why. That's pressure. And so then that's how we got to the pressure, where I understood the pressure more. And
so you can tell by your children have this levels of learning, right? You give them information. What are they going to do with that information? If they understand that information in their heart, then they're going to relate it to other things and apply that in their life.
Well, and then as we discussed the different pieces, at those different levels, we were discussing the pan, we were discussing different things. It helped me refine what the principle really was. Because when you first gave me this, asked me to give that sentence of
concise principle
statement, it was, but it wasn't refined.
Yes.
And as we applied little bits of it, or bits of our knowledge to it, it started to help me get that more concise.
Yeah.
And so
good.
Yeah.
All right. So it also, if you guys know the key pattern of learning that I teach in another section of the website, then you know that we followed this exactly through. That I created the curiosity.
Let's point it out.
Okay. So I created the curiosity by saying, when I was a little girl, this big, huge volcano happened, and it was devastating. Right? That's the curiosity. It was warming his heart. And then it led to him to ask a question.
Well, yeah, because I'd had that question forever anyway.
Yeah.
And so that question of...
And once he had that question, then learning happened. Right? So you have
Well,
curiosity
I had the ability
first.
to open my mind enough, or my heart enough to
ready to learn.
Allow for learning,
Yeah. And that's the receiving cycle. You receive learning. And then we created the relating it to other things, relating it to you kept relating it to Hawaii's volcano versus Mount St. Helens volcano. And so that's a relating process. And then when you understood that it's heat that causes the steam, that causes the explosion, that's the understanding level. Right. And then you started teaching me then about, well, it could apply to this, and it could apply to this, and it could apply to this. And you want to go teach that principle then, and you saw that in other things, and to where you got wisdom. You're like, oh, I really get this now. And then at the end, when we started to stop the role play, you're like, hey, well, what about this? Did you know that the craters happened and the steam was being released weeks before? And I was like, oh, now we're starting with that curiosity again, and you're ready to learn again. And it's a cycle. It's a give and receive cycle. So how that works is that you increase in curiosity yourself. God gives you knowledge. And then you relate it to yourself and apply it to yourself, and you receive understanding. And you share it and talk about it, discuss it.
Discuss your experience,
your understandings and your experiences, and you gain wisdom. And God gives you wisdom. Then you're curious about something else, and then the cycle just continues and continues. So we've used all of these things. We've used the key pattern of learning. We've used the principles, concepts, and procedures. We've used the levels of learning, all within this 10 minutes conversation about Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh?
And so you're saying that we can learn quite a bit in just a very short amount of time.
We can, but it's cool. Like, you got to a principle that you could apply in other areas of life. If we as teachers don't have that goal in mind, then it stops at the knowledge level.
It does. And yet, because the way you did it, I'm going to, even if I haven't gone to the level of applying it other places, I will remember that part of the information at least a little bit longer.
Yeah. And if you were younger and didn't have the reasoning skills, you would remember the story of Mount St. Helens and how it happened, right?
Yeah.
And then later on in life, you would go, oh, well, this happened. That's like Mount St. Helens. I remember that story,
Yeah.
And that's how we teach, 2 candies plus 2 candies is 4 candies to kids. But when they understand it later, it's the symbol of 2 and the symbol of 2 equals the symbol of 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking, going back to the concepts and how the procedure you took me through to learn all this, there's so many different, you used a few questions at the beginning of for yourself, and then you just got me curious about the Mount St. Helens with the, just talking about it. But you could have easily it just came to me as something that, because people may be asking, okay, so how can I get that curiosity going?
Yeah.
Well, one way is you related a story that happened that you remembered from before.
As a little girl. Mm-hmm.
But you could have also just said something more shocking.
Oh, yeah. There's 100 ways to do curiosity.
Like something like, well, Mount St. Helens, you know that Mount St. Helens was exploded? It wasn't, I don't know. You could
it wasn't a lava flow, it was an explosion.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? What's the difference?
or you could say, did you know that Mount St. Helens didn't really have any lava?
Yeah. And that would get my
you get the little kid curious.
Yeah.
So I just thought I was thinking of a few of those things while we were wrapping up there. So.
Yeah, and if you want more ideas on how to create curiosity, we have a book called I think the 31 Ways to Create Curiosity that is a free download too. So,
well,
all right.
Be sure to we just talked about the key pattern of learning, and that is elsewhere on our site, and that is available for anybody to get. We don't charge for that one. That's a free course on understanding the key pattern of learning and how to move from having a question or a curiosity to actually understanding and having wisdom, gaining wisdom from it.
Yeah, that's true.
So you should check it out.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And don't forget, this Saturday is our monthly one, and we're going to have Joyce Kinmont and Marlene Peterson teach us about motherhood, and it's so marvelous. So marvelous.
And Tresta.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you later.
Bye. To subscribe to our YouTube channel, click here. To choose from our gifts and request updates on our most popular topics, visit calledtolearn.com. For more videos like this one, click this playlist. For homeschool stories, click this playlist here.